So I guess I'll start. Okay, I have this thing with the speaker in speaker. So actually today's lecture, it's not a lecture, it's most like a workshop because we had 3 different workshops, right? Then one of them is like SketchUp, AutoCAD, and then no one to teach ControlNet. So I volunteered myself to teach, even though I would say I'm not the expert at this. Um, I'm really not the expert at doing this, but I know a bit, so I want to share a bit of what I do. I think there are a lot of companies that are very, very into all this. And I think, so I just start. At the early days, right, we always have this very ambivalent relationship with computation, I would say. You know, we're very worried the art of drawing will be lost. So in my workshop here, I'm just going to go through 4 things. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to go through how Midjourney can actually work. So those who are really, really good at it, you might not learn something new, but for those who are relatively new at it, I will run through the steps because I find a lot of previous lectures or workshops nowadays that are conducted, they don't really tell you what to do. They'll say, you got to buy this, buy that to do it. Actually, it's really quite simple. And then the next one is Stable Diffusion, which is really a powerful tool that you can use. And then what's next? So for me, I'm still very young. This is my thesis project. I always like computer stuff. So I work with this, my professor back at NUS was devising, can we actually use data analytics to do a design project? So the resultant is space syntax, which is actually a very interesting tool because it considers a lot of parameters that are invisible to, say, the human intuition, and also invisible to a lot of other planners. So the idea was, can we pedestrianize the whole of Joo Chiat Road without affecting traffic, among other things, and improve walkability? So the answer was yes, you can. And through this, I also learned that, you know, in data analytics, it's always very important to put what data you want to show. So for instance, like a transport engineer is probably very interested in transport related stuff, but he's not interested in pollution. He's not interested in noise. He's not interested in the health of our lungs. He's only interested in how fast can the car go and move the traffic. So we as architects and designers must be very aware of all this. And this is mainly why what I want to share here today is, among all these tools, we still have a role to play. And I think this is my my journey. Woha is here. Hi, guys at Woha. I spend a lot of my time in Woha and I really enjoy working there. So I worked on a lot of projects, but within the projects, I think there's a lot of freedom in the company itself where we can explore a lot of digital technologies, such as in the Singapore Pavilion where I was running the design, and we actually could even create a robot. And one of the things I pondered upon is, can we actually make the building alive? How can we show that the building is alive? So fast forward today, I'm kind of somehow ended up running my own studio, and it's a very, very small setup with a lot of feasibility studies. So I eventually use my interest to explore further into how can we automate all the mundane stuff and win more projects at the same time. So I think we all know all this. We always design our ideas in pieces of paper, and then CAD allows us to draw faster, and then beams are like 3D reports to do the design. So if we were to summarize how we actually use technology in design, right? There's not much change from 2500 BC to probably 1985. It's very manual. And then suddenly in 1985, all the way now to today, there's like an explosion of different ways of representation and realization in various formats. And maybe in the future, we have full machine intelligence, which here I want to cover that I don't think is possible at this current stage of where we are at in the society. Because if we were to look at AI, right, it's split into 3 different parts. We talk about AI, but AI essentially is a collection of many different things. You know, in very standard algorithm-based programs, technically is machine learning and some kind of intelligence in a way. You use it in your structure analysis, you use it in your BIM modeling. Now we are moving more towards neural networks that are used in all your LLMs, your energy modeling software. Cognitive is a bit hard to come by, and it's not really here yet. I would say we call this kind of thing deep tech, where you have computer vision and they try to predict whether a guy's movement is suspicious or not. And this really is about having the empirical evidence and also the human intuition built into it. And this is, to me, a very cognitive framework, which I think computers with its current stage is very hard to model in because you need large quantity of data set. So computers today are very good at two things, I would say, for architects. First is image generation, and second is natural language processing, which everyone is definitely using one or both right now. And today I'm going to focus a lot on image indexing. I think natural language processing has been covered yesterday. But what I really want to talk about is that AI is very good at finding information and assessing it. But the issue with architecture is that the knowledge is very, very poorly organized and poorly dissipated and almost inaccessible because every company goes through different stages of the project and everyone has proprietary data. Right? So if I were to use this SIA mode of practice kind of table here and kind of group everything together with their task components, we always look at what is higher learning and lower order learning. And computers are very good at this lower order thinking, which is very logical, So if we were to look at all the different stages of the project, the ones in purple are called procedural, which is executed through logic. You have a checklist, you just run through it by the logic. If it checks, it's done. But a lot of our tasks is actually very integrative and inherently very perceptive because we need some intelligent integration of the process and also integrating them together to understand what it actually means. And things that are very perceptive, it's very hard to automate because it's based on perception and based on what you want to do. So I would say much of today's software is very procedural still, and it's important not to use AI in every aspect of what you want to do because it's very procedural, and many of what our tasks are doing is not procedural. So it's important to just look at individual components within each task, what can be automated away that is procedural, and stop worrying about our work being replaced by machines, because my personal opinion is that will not happen. We still need a lot of human judgment, and this is where I'm going to cover a little bit more today on the front part, which is schematic design, and how we're going to use generative AI in that. So if I were to do a sketch problem on this stage of the project, if I were to create an AI system, what would it be, I always find there's a conflict between generating options and evaluating options, as I think the task force probably at CoreNetX has found out also. It's very difficult to do both because they are inherently in conflict with one another. But I think the AI process will actually make the architect's services more reliant because you have all this data, you have all this analysis, but you need the architect to come here and fine-tune the model. They have to come here and make a very important judgment call. And with a future full of data output, there are a lot of performance aspects of things that are still very interlinked that you cannot code in, and it's still very up to the human perception. And don't forget, we are in the industry that works with a lot of humans, so the human touch is definitely necessary. So this is just my intake, but today I'm going to focus really on the last part, which is currently very, very common and very capable now. And it's sort of check all the lists, The goal of the AI, can it do very accurate visual representation? Yes, it can. What's the metric? How fast can it do? Can it produce faster than current process? Yes, it can. And the type of AI basically is sketch and text to image. So if we were to put it in a like a workflow process, this is my speculation, or rather in my own doing right now, I can actually do things faster with feasibility studies, because back then you have to do a lot of Pinterest mood boards and go through Lumion and Photoshop, many iterations. Whereas now I can just go to Midjourney and Stable Diffusion and come with a relatively output that you can bounce ideas off people. So you're using AI, your workflow probably at the start of a project, or rather pitching for projects, becomes inherently much shorter. Yesterday there was a discussion whether Photoshop or old school rendering can be replaced by AI. I would say yes and no. There are definitely projects that are, I know Gensler has done full projects with AI generation already, so it's not new. It will be done for certain projects. So today's topic is really much what kind of generative AI can I use? I think a lot of people are very familiar with all this, maybe say 4 main AIs that are very common. So if I were to do like a business 101 diagram, easy to use, hard to use, high control, low control, I think the easiest to use is probably DALL-E, but it has the worst output, because I think the method of DALL-E is they cache all these images from stock image generation. So the keywords and everything, it tends to go towards looking like comics and stock images, which is not what you want. Midjourney is actually relatively very easy to use and has very good output, but it's not really very good in control. You cannot control the output that much. There is a LookX AI, is quite new, but I find the outputs, you can control it, but the outputs are very rendering looking, which, it looks somehow very Asia Pacific rendering project, the ones you see in very polished projects. It's not my cup of tea. So I think Stable Diffusion is the thing that I think everyone here should kind of master, because it has very high control. It's very hard to use, but if you understand the concept behind it, you can actually understand all sorts of generative AI and what is the logic behind it. So first, I'm just going to go through Midjourney. What is Midjourney? I'll go through the 4 main topics of Midjourney: ideate, prompting, remixing, and blending. So if you know this 4, you can actually work really fast. Midjourney, what is Midjourney? It's just an app that works in Discord. It's very poor decision on their side to do a product that works on Discord, because many people above the age of 40 would not know what that is. But for young people, we use it for gaming. But I think they are coming with web-based prompting soon. As you see on their website, it's coming soon. So fret not. It's free, but I think now you have to pay to run the proper things, and it runs on all PC because it's web-based and it's super easy to use. So what do I mean that? So in a lot of my pitching projects at the starting point, this is back in 2023 first quarter, when it was Midjourney version 4. It's very good to start any design process with Midjourney, because sometimes you don't know what's there, and I find more and more times people are using the same images in Pinterest all over again. And unless you are a very big company with very big profile of projects that you have done in the past, you can use that. If you are a very small output, you will not differentiate yourself from any other competition. So the best way to do ideate is really, use bold colors, bold lines, and then in this case to surprise a client, whether it's a garden installation or, like an additive reuse kind of proposal, and to show them something that's almost impossible. For instance, or maybe like a courtyard refurbishment, like a canopy design, you can show something really almost impossible to them. And then you start from there, because from all these 6 images, you can already gather some lines, some curves, some way of laying things out. And I think it's a very good starting process. It's definitely not the final image. Same goes for, I think, structures. I really find using prompts, like using it to be in film format, it's very exciting, because it gives you this old retro brutalistic feel. But you can see in some of the objects where the structure forms of itself, the way it curves out is very elegant, and architects, once we see this, we get very excited, we can actually translate that kind of language into concept design. So how do you prompt? Very easy, you just put text and your parameters, and you can actually use images. So what do I mean by that? If you see these 3 examples, you have cheesecake painting, cheese with a double colon, cake painting, cheese, cake, and painting. So essentially, you're telling the computer you are segregating these words into individual formats, and they will read it as their own. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. So you also can add weights into it. I think not a lot of people know that, because you can see here wood teapot. If you put wood 3 and teapot 1, wood 5 and teapot 1, it really shows the difference. And I think for this, try not to do too much numbers. You can just assign probably 2 or 3 numbers. You can get a good effect. Yeah. Someone in the chat asked. Okay. Okay. So here's the reason why you're here. I have the cheat sheet of the prompt guide. Okay, I don't know why. This is my cheat sheet. So very simple. It's just prompting is actually an art. You really need to just try out the words. So you really shouldn't use literal phrases. One of the things I like to do is I like to go to Google. I like to Google a term. Let's say I like to Google vertical greenery. What is the result? Actually, it's not the result you expect, because not everyone uses the same term. Sometimes you have to go to Google and find what the term is, and the results you actually get, that is probably the word you want to use for the software, because they read images that are cached online. They are not reading images from your publication, your journal, your SIA magazine. They're reading all the things online. So, and sometimes things, just try to keep it as simple as possible. So if, let's say, you want to say very poetically, an apple that shines with a bright red hue, actually you can just use red shiny apple. It's as simple as that, and you can always modify the terms to use negatives. And I think the usage of color is very important. The best images comes with giving it color, like just say red, or like striking blue or green. I think this is where you can experiment in yourself. So I show you an example. This was just like a proposal, like a starting point. I really want to explore the materiality of this stone and roots. So I imagine in my head how the roots look like. So these 2 are Google images of 3 roots, and another images of a rough stone. So basically, once you group them together, you get something like that, as simple as that from Midjourney. Then all you need to do is make sure that you have this, I would say the 5 key points. You must always put the subject at the front. The computer will always read anything at the front with the highest importance. Anything at the back is of secondary importance. So if you put daylight at the front, it will definitely come out with daylight and it will be screaming at you. So always put your object at the front. Let's say, for instance, I want to sort of look like a museum. I find starting with a museum sometimes gives the best form, rather than starting with a hotel or starting with a residential. Even if your project is a shop, you can start with a museum because it gives you more creative output. Then you talk about the setting. I think the detail is where it really adds the additional value of the project, because you can start to use terms like complex root structure. You can bring in even parametric terms, and then you will try to understand. And one thing I find about Midjourney is it's very easy to use because it tries to dumb down everything. In Stable Diffusion, you will find that sometimes you use very complex words, the computer will reach a roadblock. It will not generate any images. But Midjourney tries to dumb everything down. So if you realize your image is being dumbed down, you are using the wrong terms. because the computer doesn't understand, it just goes to the safest option. And what you want to do is really make it as creative as possible. If you're trying to do anything that's not creative with Midjourney, then maybe I would say it's not the right use, because the use is to really have it to generate as crazy ideas as possible, and then from there extract lines, extract forms, extract even, I would say even the glass patterns. Sometimes it's quite creative how they do concrete paneling, and extract all this out and then to do your design. So next part I'll go to is really about remixing. This is something everyone should do with your image. So I have a few ideas. I really like Crystal's artwork because it wraps building around. And I like to maybe set it in the ancient time. And I like people to gather around it. And I like this cloth, instead of being wrapped around, to be sort of blowing by the wind. So I have this basically 4 ideas. So I need to combine them together in a statement. So I combine with all these terms: architecture photograph of crystal installation, ancient temple covered in architectural fabrics, people gathering, and colorful fabrics. So all these words that I bold, I actually went to Google and find it. And these are the results that came out. So I was quite certain that my generation will be good. But actually I was wrong. It ended up showing a lot of interior looking images, which is what Midjourney is really good at, but it really sucks giving exterior architecture images. So here is where remixing really works. So what you need to do is you need to find the seed of the generation. So this is a computer science terminology, because every time you generate an image, there's a random number behind it, because it's never random. So you need a seed to make it really truly random. So once you find the seed, you regenerate it again with the same terms. You can find that, okay, which photo kind of resembles my idea quite the same. You click on it, get the seed, and then you start to change the parameters. So for instance, here I change it, ancient temple covered with fabrics as 10, crystal as 2. And then you can see number 4 kind of gets slowly into what I want. And then after kind of toying around with this a little bit more, with some variations, I finally got what I want with some other nice images. And that's simple as that, 5 minutes. Yeah. So I think the rule of thumb is don't spend your whole day clicking Midjourney, because you will never get what you want. If you don't get what you want, you have to change your prompt. You have to find a seed, you have to find the right thing, and then zoom in into it, because the machine is dumb. It doesn't know what you want. And I know everyone is somehow addicted. In a way, we are programmed to be addicted to all this lottery. You just keep clicking. Like it's like lottery, right? But then you end up, then you say, oh, not enough credits. Please pay $50 more. Yeah. The next one I really like, I think all the architects should try out, is called blending, because it takes 2 ideas and make it into one. So back then, I think this is back in January or March 2023, water slides are very good. Midjourney does certain things very good, and water slides is one of them. So I generated this kind of water slide looking images, just for example. And I was wondering how will it look like if it's paired up with a HDB, you know. This is one of Darren So's photograph from HDB. And the trick to blending images is that you need to find images that are similar in terms of composition. You cannot find 2 images that are very different. For instance, you can't put in here, let's say, an interior of an MRT. It doesn't work. You need to find 2 images that are very similar, and the results will become very good. So if you blend them together, this is the result that you can get. I have another one for Woha here, Oasia. If you blend it with water slides, this is what you get. So I think the best creativity comes in 2 parts. One is using real world imagery, and another one is coming out with something that's generated from Midjourney. And then this is where you can let your ideas flow freely. You know, if you have some idea of something more organic versus existing build project, this is where you can start to ideate. And the trick here is not using the software, but also knowing which photo to use in that case, and also just basic composition. So I've come to the end of Midjourney. Now I'm going to talk. The main thing to talk about here is stable diffusion, and I hope by the end of today here, you can go and try it on your own. It's highly complicated, but it's not that complicated. So I'm going to go through the basics. I'm going to go through ControlNet, which is how we can maximize a lot of control. And usually all this are condensed into 2-day workshops on YouTube, but I'm going to try to do it in the next 30 minutes. So what is stable diffusion? Okay, stable diffusion is developed by this company called Stability AI. It is probably the last company on planet Earth that is doing open source image model. We hope that it doesn't get bought over by Microsoft because they are on the buying spree, and that will signal the end of all this open source stuff. So version 1.5 is the stable model. It has about 0.98 billion parameters. The current model is Stable Diffusion XL. It's about 6.6 billion parameters. And I think a few days ago, Stable Diffusion version number 3 just came out, has 8 billion parameters. So these models are developed by Stability AI, and they release it open source to everyone to try and build their things upon it. So you can actually use it for your own. And you can tell by these two diagrams that the second diagram here is that the XL quality is better. Lah. Don't use 1.5. Lah. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, why did I show this XL or stable diffusion process? It has two meanings. That means there is always noise and refiner. Noise is a concept, we will deal with it later, but just remember, anything with noise means you're adding it to be blur, okay? So, stable diffusion is open source, therefore it's free with an asterisk, okay? It's not like Midjourney, it's not like other things where you have to pay to use, it's free. But it's not fully free because you need a very powerful computer to run it, because it runs on your computer. It runs on your computer speed, and that's why nowadays NVIDIA graphics cards are like very, very sparse and very expensive. Yeah, because you really need a very good, I would say NVIDIA graphics card to run it. You need a very good processor, and you need to really basically understand a little bit of Python and what is Git. So you basically have to install all these things on your computer and use this web UI to run it. But for everyone else who has not a very big computer, you can always use web services. Of course there are. They charge from 50 cents per hour that you can use it, and they have uploaded all the latest things, so you don't have to worry about it. And there are so many service providers now that run this software for you, and it's 50 cents per hour to generate images. So if you're not using it, don't use it. I think it's a very low cost basis, and you can do amazing things with it, which I will show you. Today I'm only going to go through A1111, which is the most popular user interface. The second most popular user interface is Comfy UI now. It kind of looks like a grasshopper interface. I think I'm experimenting with it right now, so I'm not going to teach it because I not fully understand some parts of it. There are two other UIs that you can use, which are easier, but I don't find it very useful because they don't have much control. Okay, so this is how it looks like. It's very complicated, but it's not complicated. So once let's say you're using the cloud version, once you log in and you sign up, they will launch this interface for you, right? So basically, this is the web UI for Automatic 1111. It's the most commonly used web UI. It's I won't say the easiest, but the most straightforward. It has the first thing here, which is the checkpoint. A checkpoint is also known as a stable diffusion model, which you can actually download it online. There are millions of models that are pre-trained on Civet AI. You can just go there and download. Don't get thrown away by all these pictures of beautiful women there. The reason why all these open source models have all these beautiful women images is because it grabs people's attention. Yeah, it's the only thing that it allows people to say download their models because they can prove that they have done something. You know, imagine you do a model and you say, hey, I can put planters on buildings. No one's going to download it. You know. But I say I can add freckles on a lady's face. They say, oh, wow, so interesting. So it's just a demonstration, okay? But all of them can do buildings as well, especially things like Juggernaut XL is one of the good ones. So the prompt interface is very simple. There's just a prompt and the negative prompt. And the good thing about Stable Diffusion is you try not to go over 75 characters or words, because or Chinese will say you shouldn't be too loso, because after some point the computer will ignore whatever you say. And actually I've tested quite extensively. Even some words like realistic, ultra high definition, the Stable Diffusion just ignores it. Yeah, so you have to be very concise, and I like it because I don't like to be too loso. I just like to tell what it is and let it generate. And you have a negative prompt, which sometimes I find it useful, sometimes not really. It really depends. So if you go online and see a lot of people using all these crazy prompt things, I don't know, maybe someone will tell me that it works better, but for my experience, it's the same results. So we have this box here, which has all these little things called sampling steps and method. Sampling steps, sampling method, width and height, batch count, batch size, and what is CFG scale. It's not Chengdu fried chicken. I'll go through each of them one by one. So sampling steps and method is very simple. It's just an algorithm that use, and you can see all these are different ways of sampling. Basically, what sampling is just they put a lot of noise pixels on it and they use a different method to generate the image. So all you need to know is that there's two different kinds of sampler. One is A, which is the old samplers, and one is the newer ones. And all you can see in these two graphs, what it means is just that the newer models are more consistent. That means whatever you do with many sampling steps, you will get consistent result. As you can see from the cat here, the newer models do not deviate too much, which is very good because nowadays you find a lot of this text to image to videos are very consistent. And which one should you use then? There is this debate between using Euler and DPM. But most people now use DPM because the rendering time is almost the same, but the output is very consistent. What do I mean by that? I'm going to show you an example. So if you see this generation here, both have the same prompts and the same seed, but I took different steps each time using Euler A and DPM Keras. You can see DPM gives me the same result every time, which is what you want, because you want an image that is consistent to your design or to your generation. You don't want, it's like, hey, I like this photo, and then you generate again, it's a different thing, you know, maybe you generate a building, later it's a boat. That's not what you want. So consistency is very important here, and DPM is the model that you should use if you want a very consistent result. Okay. Size and batch count. Okay, people, this is very straightforward, right? But size actually matters, unfortunately. If your computer is not powerful enough, you should always keep your resolution low. You can always upsize it later. Yeah. Batch size means amount of images to generate in parallel, and batch count is the amount of images that will generate back to back. So all you need to know is that if you have batch size of 2 and batch count of 8, you have 16 images, okay? Usually I will just increase the batch count. That means 2 batches in one seed. As I said, size matters because if you use the same prompt in a different size, you get different results. These are same seeds, as you can see. So square is obviously the worst for any architectural generation. You should always use portrait if you want to generate a tower, and landscape if you want to do something really wide vision. So the trick is here is generate something that fits. Let's say you're doing a skyscraper, generate a very portrait image first, and then after that you can use all the other tools to zoom out, to fill in the blank spaces. That is the trick that you should always adopt. You never say, hey, because my boss wants a landscape photo, I need to generate landscape, but I can't get what I want. So you have to always use these tricks to kind of mix and match. Then we talk about CFG scale, classifier free guidance. It's just a guidance scale. Basically, it says that the higher the number, the more the image sticks to the text. You can see the scale here at 1, it is like just woke up, you know, not really there. But at 7, it kind of represents what it's a kind of high-rise tower. So basically, it's like to me, I call this a creativity slider. If you want more creative, you go lower. If you want less creative, you go higher. But usually you set at 7 to 10. That's the right amount. Okay. So I give you another example. This is like trying to be creative, right? I want to do a mushroom-shaped house in the forest. You can see at scale number 1, it kind of resembles like
a whole
pizza oven or something in the forest. But as you go to 7, it kind of gets something like what you want. But one thing you notice is that at 12 or 20, it becomes overly saturated. And this term, well, I don't know if I'm using the right term. People call it over-baked. That means you bake something in the oven, it becomes black, you know, because it just goes back to the way the image is sampled from all this noise. Because it cannot understand what exactly you want, all the pixels just come together and do this very high contrast image. So every time you get a very high contrast image, you know that something is wrong. Either you have to change your prompt, you have to change your CFG scale, or you have to change the size of it. Or whatever you're trying to tell them to do is impossible, you know? Like getting someone back from the dead, I don't know. Yeah, so this is the basis of stable diffusion. The next part I'm going to talk about is control net. And this is done by control net. Very nice. So what is control net? I think a lot of people have already experimented with it when you see sketch to render. Basically, you take an image input, it will post-process it, and you prompt it, you get the output. So for instance, I use Moshe Safdie's Sky Habitat. I prompt it to be a scaffolding structure, and then, you know, let this work, and then it comes out looking like it, but not really like it. Okay, so this is very powerful because you can manipulate many things, and you can work from sketch to render kind of approach to that. So in the control net module, it looks something like that. There's an image input, which is the control that you want to use, the type of model, and the type of weight. So what is the control type? It's just what pre-processing of the image that you want to do. So for instance, you have an image that is a photograph. You should always use Canny, for instance. Or you have a model that has different layers, but it's a meshing model. Then you might want to use MLSD or Scribble or even depth. Like for hand sketch, of course, you might want to use Scribble and Sketch because it's more, the machine reads it better. So it's just different types of pre-processing, and you have to choose wisely. Okay, so I use Pan Pacific Orchard here to give an example. So you have the input, you process it with Canny. It kind of looks like this outer edges, so the computer will use these outer edges to control the output image. If you use depth, you can see it's more, things are more kind of convoluted together. Some people like to do double. I don't like to do it because the more you control, sometimes the output is terrible. Yeah, so I like to give the image generation a little bit of creative freedom, and this is just my personal preference. And I think important thing to note is you must always resize your control image same as the output. So for instance, if you have a very long image, you shouldn't expect the output to be portrait because it will crop. So as I said, it's the same as Midjourney. When you choose two images, make sure you choose two of the same looking images because it will work better. Yeah, so always keep that in mind. Composition and choosing the image is very important. So here are a lot of controls again. What is preprocessor, control weight, control mode, and resize mode? Basically, the higher the number, more than one, the image that is output will be forced to take the form of the control. The best practice I always like to do is 0.7 to 0.9. Again, you want to give the machine a lot of freedom to kind of come out with something creative. If not, might as well you just build the model and render it yourself. I think that's faster. So the use of generative AI here is really to let it express some form of freedom. What do I mean by that? If you look at me giving an image and I said, okay, I want it to look like Zaha Hadid in Dubai. If you give 0.7, it kind of gets the image, but it sort of adds all these window lines and seals and kind of gives it a little bit of facade outer form to it and sets the background very nicely. But if you give it too much freedom, it will say that, hey, actually I don't need to follow this quite close. So you want a towel, I give you a towel. So it becomes straight, which is not what you want. And controlling it too much, you can see even you say in Dubai, it gives you a nighttime photo and it gives you this very weird pathway because it has no freedom to really deviate from the looks. So these are some experiments. You can actually change the material of any project that you like. So it's in a way allows you to express freedom. These are just playing around. These are not project. Again, Pan Pacific Orchard because I had the photo and I decided to just show the use case. One thing very powerful is when teaching this NUS Bachelor of Landscape course, a lot of them have Rhino models and they build up all these parametric models, but they do not know how to fill in the textures underneath the ground because students sometimes they are also not enough experience or they are focused on certain structures. They forgot that, sometimes when you design the groundwork, there's a lot of ideas and thoughts go to it. So even if you just do a screenshot, putting it through ControlNet, it can generate different ideas. So for instance, this work, we never thought about having water feature underground and maybe opening up some of this lattice work to be either glass or open fins, but somehow the model ControlNet and Stable Diffusion read it like that, and then we took this design and we iterate further from there. So in a way, it's not fully replacing humans, but it's really giving you an alternative view of what you probably would not have imagined because sometimes we are too fixated about certain ideas. These are some of my projects. I cannot really share some projects that I work with because they are still in progress, but this is really a project in Europe that we are doing schematic study for, and essentially it's a lot of hotels clustered into one on the hillside. And at that time, we only had some areas, but we have this really huge 2 hectares land, and we only have maybe 10,000 square meters of GFA. So the answer was like, how should I place it around? So I gave some ideas, maybe cluster them, maybe move them apart, and I put some prompts, maybe some are more curved because this was second time I met the client. I don't really know whether it's a Zaha Hadid person or a Kengo Kumar person, so in a way, I generated over 40 images for them as a mood, and they were quite impressed because they said, this one kind of speaks to me. This speaks to me, and then it saves you the need to guess what the client wants. And sometimes, especially for smaller outfits like us, we are very much bounded by what the client needs, rather than people with already established design flares, And at some point, they also don't know what you can do. So in a way, giving them all these options, or rather curating the options for them, helps you do your work better. So I know now the client doesn't like curved windows, but like curved wood panels, but prefer it to be straight and wants it to be clustered on the hill. So with all these inputs, I can actually proceed the design much faster. Instead of doing all the design and then coming back with one rendering after 3 weeks and the client said, hey, This is not what I want. And you just wasted your whole trip, you know. So next one I'll talk about is fine-tuning. I think this is very important, and this is what actually in what I'm doing as a research and what I'm also doing as a consultancy work to some people is I'm helping people to fine-tune their models, because as more and more as you use AI, you realize that you can't do what you want, but you really want to do it. You really want the machine to bow down to your will. So fine-tuning, I will talk about three main things that you can do to fine-tune. One is image to image. It's a feature. The other one is in-paint sketching, and the last one is LORAs, which is custom models. Here I put an image that I found online of Emma Watson, and it shows very simple, different steps to take to generate and different ways to denoise it. You can see that by denoising more, that means making it closer to 1, the image becomes blur, and the computer has to guess what is next. So by denoising it fully, the computer totally doesn't get Emma Watson at all. But by doing it half, it sort of gives you someone that looks like Emma Watson, but not really. And by doing it 2.5, you kind of get a more touch-up image. So again, it's about, I would say, about creativity slider again. If you want it to be ultra creative, slide all the way to 1. If you want it to be not so creative, just to touch up, slide nearer to 0. So in if you use your own computer, you can download the plugins. If you use a cloud service, these are all pre-installed for you. You can just click it. So there's this picture looking thing. It's image to image. The palette thing is in paint. That means you can paint on the model. And this square ruler, I forgot what it's called. Triangle.
Yeah, you prepare 40.
It's called upskill.
Mood images.
Yeah, it's to upscale your image because
you generate 40 mood images.
I'll explain it later. Okay, so again, Pan Pacific Orchard. I'm using this for consistency. So I generated an image through ControlNet that tells the Pan Pacific Orchard to look like concrete. Okay, I have my prompts here below. Lush greenery, Singapore, daylight, and I use the same seed. So I go to image because it looks like crap, and I use 0.8 denoising strength, which is quite creative, but not ultra creative, right? And you can see the more I run it, that means I take the image, I run it again, the more it starts to deviate from the original. Maybe to something more legible as a building, maybe to something more creative. It looks like a abandoned building in Jakarta, you know? But after 6 runs, it kind of looks like that. So you can see by using image to image, you can completely move the model away to something by using the different denoising strength. So I'll show you an example from sketch to messing. Basically, just do some quick lines on your iPad, 3 seconds. You do on ControlNet, on sketch, and I generate this very nice looking tower. And by doing it 5 times of image to image, you get something that is totally out of the planet looking to something more or less grounded onto Earth. What image to image does is every time it runs an image and you keep telling it it's a building, it will reinforce the point, and it will start to add columns that is associated with buildings, glass panels that are properly aligned, balconies that make sense. So every time you run a model, I would say the first run is never the end, because you need to always refine upon it to make it make sense. And I'll show you one of this proposal that I did for a house. Was just experimenting, can we have a external structure system outside? Of course, the engineers were not going to like me for this. But I actually started off with a very simple line sketch of lattices, but it somehow became really curvy for some reason, and I really like it. And I start off with it to be ultra dystopic. That means I say it must be look like in a video game, because I find video game prompts to be a bit more creative and brutalist to be a bit more out of the world. And then slowly through image to image, I change the prompts to make it more rational. And you can see from there, they sort of rationalize to add in floors. You know, you can sketch in the floors as well. You start to draw places that you want people to be in it. And I will say that, you know, if you are in a very tight deadline, like a 3 weeks competition or 2 weeks competition, actually you can submit a render that is from ControlNet. And you imagine you can do like 20 proposals, you know, with different facade, because you just have to have the sketch and the model is there. You just have to edit parts of it. So it's a very, I would say a very powerful workflow that everyone can take advantage of. So image to image, just to demonstrate some of these other things I do just for fun, by changing even just one word, when you do image to image, changes the mood of it. So if you start off with dystopian and you start off with cheerful, you can see what looks like, actually dystopian looks nicer architecturally, but cheerful looks kind of like, I don't know, a mix of Gaudi and Notre Dame, you know. So just by changing one word, you can already look at the feel of the image is very different and the way they generate it. Same for here, you know, Zaha Hadid is one of my favorite prompts because it kind of goes a bit more creative. And you can see just by doing this, you get 2 different outputs very easily. So I think image to image is something that always make sure that your first iteration, you can always change the material out of it. And here, upscaling is something everyone also needs to do. I think not many people realize that you have this feature because images generated by AI are usually very small. They are usually 500 to 600 pixels because the bigger the photo is, the more computing power and more time it will take. That's why it starts small. But there are technology now invented called the upscaler. That means you take the same image, it will blow it out bigger with less time and less computing power. And that's how you get this kind of rare. If you zoom in the image, it's quite high definition because these images are like 4,000 pixels wide. Yeah, and it's of course every single part has been upscaled through a system, but essentially some of them, I would say, if you submit an A3 report, it's actually, as you know, the client can't zoom in that deep. It's quite good to use it for a competition because they can't really tell, you know, and then you won't spend that $800 or $1,000, or maybe you need to put staffing, manpower, 1 or 2 interns to do the rendering. It's no longer needed, you know, you just need 1 person to churn out all these renders. So there is a real advantage in that sense. The last one I talk about is in painting. Again, use Pan Pacific Orchard because consistency, right? It allows you to remove any parts of the image that you don't want. So it's very similar to Photoshop's this feature to fill. I think Photoshop features are quite good now. You definitely can use it, but in painting allows you to change the mood. So for instance, you can see these 2 images. I actually can flip it around. I can tell it to change the things that are not painted or change the things that are painted. So I imagine the hotel after years of 100 years of neglect, because everyone wants maintenance-free buildings, it will look like that. Or the Thai embassy at the front got into very poor maintenance and then it got into ruins like that. But you can see how the AI can actually instantly read the same image and generate your prompt. And that allows you to change the materiality, allows you to explore different formats. So imagine you have a render that is ready to go of a building. You can instantly tell the client, if I change the color, how it will look like. You don't have to do workflows multiple times on different softwares to show how it looks like. And then if you were to combine these features together, this was just an experiment. If you combine ControlNet and in-painting, you can actually do what I call rapid just study. You know, you can do as good as 1-word prompts and as simple as 3 boxes of drawing, and you can do a building sketch. And I find this very powerful, especially for projects that are infill. This is just a test. I'm not tearing down the shophouses at Joo Chiat, don't worry. But imagine, especially projects in low-rise area where it's like an infill building, or it's like you have contacts at the site, and you just want to test out how it looks like. It's quite a powerful tool to do that. And you can generate, I think I did try this out. 5 minutes, you can do about 2,000 options. Yeah. So this is no human power can actually do that kind of speed. Facade explorations that are part of the concept for a small building. Form explorations for skyscrapers. Again, outrageous form explorations as well. Structurally, it doesn't work. Tons of problems, but it looks cool. And also things like even like octopus-looking buildings. So in a way, the creativity is unlimited, and don't always think that you want to create a perfect building. Think of it as an extension of your mind to see what the computer can do. The last point I want to cover is something quite new and something I really want to help maybe the architects in the industry and also in Singapore in general is I find a lot of these models, they are not fine-tuned to Singapore needs. If you ask them to do a balcony, most likely you will get a very North American-centric kind of look because that's just how the ways are cached. And Singapore images tend towards to have a very, I would say, HDB bias, HDB-looking bias. So this is where training images to fine-tune the model comes in. What you do is you basically take 10, you can take as little as 10 photos of the things that you wanted, and you train it with some keywords of what you want it to be, and you build it on top of the existing model. So this training time is actually only, let's say, half an hour or 2 hours, depending on your computer speed. So you don't have to train 8 billion photos, you just train 10 photos, and you can come up with things that are very different. For instance, let's say you really want to do green wall design, and I can tell you a lot of times these models that are open source, they cannot do green wall or green facade that well, which is quite ubiquitous to Singapore architecture. So imagine you have your own repository in your own company, your own model, your own photos, your own language, because every company has their own design flair and language, and you own the copyright that you train this model into. And I take an example of MVRDV. This is their credit. You know, they like to do more and more valley kind of looking patterns. So without the model, it looks like a generic skyscraper, but they train it on a lot of valley looking kind of models, and it ends up looking something like what the company wants. And for all big companies with a lot of data and repository, this can be easily done, although not that easy. And this is the kind of service I would help companies to kind of sort out their material and label their data carefully and train that model and implement it so that in any projects when you render, you can get exactly what you desire, the look and feel that is straight to your kind of style. So for instance, I have my own training of LORA. I like to train it with plants on buildings. And you can see with the same prompt and everything, with the LORA, it can generate something more Singapore-centric. That's definitely more green and looks more decent because it has a proper overhang for tropical weather. It has proper window sizes. Of course, too much trees may be a maintenance issue, but the look and feel is definitely not the same as the one on the left, which is very foreign to Singapore architecture. So I will end off here by giving some food for thoughts for everyone online. Is what's next. I feel that in the data-driven society, the right data matters, but more so asking the right questions. So going back to my example now is that if you work with a transport engineer or traffic engineer, he's concerned only about traffic. And that's where architects' roles are very important because we look at the holistic picture of everything. You know, if you give rubbish in, you will get rubbish out. So we must not only consider data, but we need to consider what data are we missing, and are we asking also the right questions? That's always the most important. And visualize a lot of companies now, a lot of designers are working on production work, and almost a lot of times we are not working on design work. You know, we get the idea, we have to produce because if not, it doesn't look legit, right? And I cannot move on to the next step. So with AI, I hope that this would be the outcome, that we are, as designers, take back our creative freedom, and we actually have people that are skilled, that use AI to work on production work, but most of the time we are thinking about design and enhances our creativity. So to end off, I would have maybe a little bit more serious is the manifesto for the future. This is my opinion. I'm may not be the most thought out, but this is what I feel. I feel that actually for architects, we should actually demand and define the technology needs. Because more and more, I feel that we are at the mercy of a lot of software providers. And they do also want to build software that suits our needs. But at the same time, they do not know where and who to look for. So that's why me and Wunwei, we came out with this hackathon, because we found that maybe us as designers and architects in the industry, when we gather together, we know what we want to do, we can actually feed back to the software providers or the people making this software that this is actually what we need. We don't need another this solution that doesn't work and doesn't suit the Singapore context. We need solutions that suit our context, that actually help our work move faster and not move slower because we have to tag more data. The second point is, I think we need a standard to organize all the data, because, and also we need also some form of data trust or even copyright, because more and more we have all these images that are out there that people are using it to make money, and more there are a lot of proprietary data that's not being shared. So we need to come together now, because we are building on the AI future. We need probably a common data standard. There is a data repository. We deal with so much information. Can the future be a combined data repository where it's a singular data environment? So I imagine a world where there is no more Outlook. You know, everything is run through the model. Every request you see is just one combined data environment. So no more someone sending a RFP over and then you have to stamp, chop, sign. Whereas actually the problem is just you want the red color pen or the blue color pen. You know, as simple as that. So that's the second point. And then the last one is, I think maybe it's beyond me, but it's just my thoughts, that we have a lot of commodified services nowadays with a fixed fee approach. But you know, when we leverage AI and machine learning tools, certain processes are shortened and certain processes are actually made better. But some tools like these AI tools are not cheap. And what is the value advantage of this? You know, is there a value that, you know, when we are outcome-based approach, for instance, where we provide a lot of extra value to the client, exploring every single possibility, can we also get rewarded for that? And I don't think we should be ashamed to be asked to be rewarded for that, because I think good design has good value and should be awarded accordingly. So that's all. I have an Instagram account with very small following. You can just follow me. I don't post quite a lot, but I will try. That's all. I will take any questions. If not, thank you for your time. Yeah. Okay. Oh, there's a question. Custom tech development is very expensive from Enders. So Enders say, I'm working with a startup and the cost to hire people to work on custom tech can be much more than a local medium-sized architecture office space is stuff. A Singapore company can't do it on. Yes, I also agree. That's why it's a manifesto. You can also technically run stable diffusion on the old NVIDIA. Yes, it's just slow. I also agree. But yeah, so I think this is very good. Don't let an old computer slow you down, because actually it is quite versatile. Stable diffusion can run on many GPUs. Yeah. Any question? Yes. Yes, yes. Ask away.
So, okay, so first thing, right? So, understand that for now, in journey, A1111 from GUI, and there are 109 web-based So for your workflow, right? Which one do you? I mean, just now you showed about mid-journey and also this automated 1111. So which one do you prefer? So how does it impact normal conventional process?
Actually, I feel that's why actually I don't really teach the. Wunwei is asking that which UI do I prefer and how does it impact my workflow? Actually, I would say that right now, because everything is brand new, everything changes every 3 months, there is no fixed workflow. It really boils down to how you feel about it. And to me, the basic thing is, if AI works faster for you, then use it. If AI works slower for you, then don't use it. Because definitely, yeah. Correct. So for me, it's the value proposition that I bring, because running a small outfit, I need to churn out a lot of visuals fast, and I do not have money to pay renderers that often. And I need to impress people really quick in the first meeting or even second meeting. I need to come up with really good looking renders. So I prefer to go the AI approach because that is wow. I'm not working with very big companies like Google, which when they see AI, they will be like, hey, this is not what I pay you for. So that's fine. It really depends on the context that you are doing. In terms of workflow, I would say the workflow changes all the time. There is no fixed workflow. You just have to figure out as you go. Yeah.
Do you prefer mid-journey or you prefer
So I prefer to work both. Now I'm doing Comfy UI because I'm trying to do real-time plugin and rendering with Rhino. So when you move certain things, it renders real-time outside to give that. But I find that sometimes quite highly unnecessary, because sometimes you just want to model the thing and then you kind of have that idea to control that model, that area that fits, and then you render the output. Some people are demonstrating that to do certain things really fast, but I find that right now it's unnecessary, because as architects, when we design a building, there is a space constraint. We work with volumes and we work with GFA. Yeah, we cannot just want to build one more floor. Yeah, so I would say there's no fixed workflow. Yeah, but you just need to understand what can the tool do for you. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. What is the art gem? Oh, can, but it will take my credits. Yeah. Actually, we should do it, we should have an art jam where we get the, Vignesh and all the people who are really good at Mid-Journey to see who can do the best looking art and then do a quick session. Huh? And you also. Yeah, I think we can do that. Okay, if there's no more questions for the people online, thank you for your time. See you, the hackathon participants, on Monday. Yeah, thank you, bye-bye. Yeah, you can ask question. 2.9. I hope you all learned something here. It's a bit technical, but